So I think there are quite a few, but let me highlight maybe two or three. Number one, I believe, is the unprecedented urbanization. If you look at where populations are today and the future, roughly half of the populations today live in urban areas. We anticipate, and data shows that probably 2/3 by 2050 will be living in urban areas as well. And by 2030, most of the delta, the population growth, will be absorbed by cities. Case in point, I was in Denver, and the data from Denver last year was that they had about 3,000 to 4,000 people moving in every week to the city. Globally, that number is more than 1 million moving into urban areas. What this means is that there are a tremendous amount of pressures on the systems and the processes and the services of the cities and communities. So that's number one. Number two, I would highlight is this need now for increased level of safety and security measures, because of the unprecedented and unfortunate tragic events globally in these cities, and cities being at the forefront of such tragic events. The necessity for a city to secure and make sure that the safety of its residents, of the tourists, of the visitors in that city are being addressed. And if you now layer that with the softer aspects around data, around technology, around infrastructure, which has a technology component almost always, and the cyber issues around that, safety and security has become paramount in terms of issues facing cities. And I think the third thing I would say is just the aspect of transparency in government and citizen expectations around it. A couple years ago, 3 years ago, there was this push to move data, to make it more open to the citizens. But over the last few years, that paradigm has also shifted into more of not just expecting that data of the city government, of the local government, but also how can I engage in the process, in the civic process, right? So which opens up new areas of innovation for the city, but also now the mayors, the city administrators would now have to think about how to meet that demand in terms of transparency and citizen engagement. So those would be the three things I would highlight as kind of the major issues of cities today. So as you know, we are a large global professional services firm, and we have a presence across cities, states, and federal government agencies. When it comes to the cities per se, we are focused on probably three primary areas of service. One is around providing or assisting the cities with a holistic approach to smart city planning. There are many work streams, initiatives that the cities have undertaken over the past few years. But now they have realized that there's a need for convergence around this, and what is that North Star that the city is driving towards? What is that moonshot or transformative idea that the mayor's platform projects? And how do you communicate that with the residents, with the visitors? And how you measure success. So there is this aspect of strategic planning, of roadmap, and that's one of our services, if you will, that we engage with cities. The other one is in terms of the technology integration. When you think about the various systems, the sensors, the data, the technologies that are out there, and more coming through the door every day, there's a real need to bring it all together in a comprehensive, scalable, and reliable manner. And that's a role that we play quite well, and that's one of the areas where we're assisting the cities with. And the third, I would say, is really managing different work streams, in terms of a portfolio management, in terms of initiative management, if you will, initiatives management, and kind of bringing all of that together. Embedded and implicit in that is really how you assist the city in bringing together different ecosystem players, the private sector, the public sector entities, and the academia, along with the citizens, to really make sure that the voices are being heard, and that is being incorporated into the city's planning process and the implementation process moving forward. Maybe I can share again a couple of examples globally and one from US. We have been working with Amsterdam for quite a few years now, and one of the work streams that we engage with them on is really building an innovation capability. Amsterdam had high aspirations around smart cities, and they realized that while they have these aspirations, how do you build an organization within the city to continue the innovation process, to come up with ideas, and then to implement those ideas? And we worked with them to set up that capability within the city organization, and then they went through that process, came up with 7 innovative ideas, of which they're now going through implementation of 2 of them to get some real results in the field. So that's one around capability building, around innovation culture, if you will. In Buenos Aires, we have an example of a phased bottoms-up approach. A few years ago, we started working with them on their asset management technologies and figuring out how they can better implement processes to be more efficient around their back-end service delivery process and also better manage their assets. It then evolved into a citizen engagement process as well, where based on that back-end system, now they're using different channels of communication with the citizens. So for example, their help desk 311 call, the Twitter feeds and other social media and other modes of engagement to help the citizens in understanding how certain issues and complaints are being resolved, but also getting feedback from the citizens on an ongoing basis. And that was the phased implementation that we went through. And in one instance, the satisfaction level was measured where the number of complaints and the resolution thereof was reduced, and the satisfaction level increased by about 93% over time. So that was another example of real results, a bottoms-up phased approach. And then the third example is a large county in US where we have been working with them to really get to a set of prioritized use cases or scenarios, if you will, where they have a smart transit issue. We worked with them to figure out what would be the top 5 scenarios that you would like to focus on, then prioritize the top 3, which would then be implemented, so to speak. It's interesting given kind of how fast technologies are changing today, and also how fast we are independent of everything else. It's becoming more global in terms of competition for talent, in terms of resources, and if you look at all of these and the drivers and the imperatives and the issues that I talked about earlier, I think there are probably a couple of places. Number one, there would be, I think, immense pressure on the cities to get results and engage citizens in a two-way street. So again, not just sharing data, but how you engage citizens in a very comprehensive, meaningful manner. And I think we should see more and more cities in that mode 3 to 5 years from now. 2 would be the application of technologies. We talk about artificial intelligence, for example. How does AI, artificial intelligence technologies and paradigms get embedded into the back-end decision-making process. What can be automated and what cannot be, and how do you build a trust? How do you build trust amongst the citizens, amongst the administrative staff, to rely on those decisions that might be automated or that might be channeled through AI algorithms. The other thing also is, I think you would see a lot more around the confluence of what we call data, digital, and design thinking, right? Because that's the way, at the end of the day, I think British Standard Institute mentions this. A smart city is about the confluence of the digital, the physical, and the human, right? And it is, 3 to 5 years from now, it is not just about automation of a process or an application of a technology. It is more about how do you redesign or rethink the process in of itself, and then apply the technology. And lastly, I would say specifically in terms of some of the other sort of cooler technologies that are coming up, additive manufacturing, 3D printing, blockchain. And if you think about resiliency issues, right? I talked about safety and security, even natural disasters. Resiliency is one of paramount importance to cities because it's about preventing some of those things from happening, but it is also about how quickly you can bounce back once a disaster happens, and how do you safeguard citizens at that point in time, how you take care of the citizens and the residents and the visitors. And if you think about additive manufacturing and the principles thereof, where you move the assembly and production to the location, and assemble on site, you are kind of trying to address the issues of resiliency and bring that to bear, and thereby serving the citizens better. So we'll see more applications of that in the future as well.